2 and 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Pro Tools is on.
It's on.
And
we live, baby.
We live. So, welcome to the Artist Lounge. This is episode 2. I'm your host, Jason Damico. And man, I can already tell this is going to be a volatile 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour here, whatever it turns out to be. I would say his name, but I'm going to give myself 30 seconds here. This artist is a child of the 80s, growing up in the era of big hair, spandex, and an Aquanet. While his tastes have matured and expanded beyond that era, he still brings the showmanship of arena rock into the modern age, covering everything from the Trogs, Neil Diamond, Biggie Smalls, and Britney Spears. Never thought we'd hear that in one sentence. Never a dull moment, as every performance is focused on maximum entertainment, which is already going to one of my bullet points there. May have referred to this artist as an acoustic DJ, as he finds a way to blend many popular songs into unique melodies and mashups. We welcome to the Artist Lounge the magnificent, glamorous Mr. Maverick Rose. Thank you for coming out.
Thanks, Jason.
In the insane RDU Triangle Friday traffic, and
I had to get my passport stamped twice on the way here. It's like another country, man. No, it's good, man. It's good. Life on the road.
Yeah, hustling before a gig.
That's right.
Both of us have a show tonight.
It's working musician's life, right? Like.
So let's get into the beginning stages real quick. Now, I've known you now for maybe 2 months.
Yeah, that's about right.
And it feels like 20 years.
I know. It's that instant connection, man. Very
cool.
So
let's just talk. I know you talked a little bit about drumming and starting out first, but I want to even go back before that. Like, let's go back to like 3, 4, 5 years old. Was there any connection? Because I know I had a connection, when I was 4 or 5. I knew all I wanted to do was music, and even if I didn't understand what that concept was, somehow just it was there in my brain. Like, there's no other choice. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
So I think for me, music was a big part because, like, growing up, a child, very small in the 80s, but I remember, watching MTV and seeing Bon Jovi and those guys on there and everything, and, Poison and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of pulled me in. I remember one time I was looking at one of my dad's Poison album covers. I was like, man, these girls are hot. He was like, those aren't girls, son. He was like, those are men. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, well, that's interesting. You can do that and still be a guy, And, but no, my first, I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to make people laugh.
There goes another bullet point.
My first flirtation with stage was wanting to be into going to comedy. And then I found out that comedians don't really make a lot of money unless you get you got to really be up there.
Yeah.
And then, I found a way that, music and comedy can combine and sort of built through that. But yeah, I mean, I remember singing solos and stuff. You do the church solos when you're little and stuff in kindergarten and grade school and stuff. Yeah. I mean, I was always kind of mesmerized by the stage, regardless, whether acting or music or comedy. I mean, they all kind of go hand in hand. They're different aspects of the business, but
for sure.
But yeah, I think the stage and a microphone has always kind of called to me. So
any particular, all right, so Poison, any particular influences that really pushed you into the realm of like, okay, I want to do that?
Yeah. So a lot of the hair music, everything from like, whether it be, well, even Billy Idol, I remember, White Wedding and that video and stuff. And, I was like a kid. So this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen, but yeah, Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith and Van Halen and all those guys that put on a show, and I kind of come from that sort of David Lee Roth sort of rock and roll where it's like, open up and shout it out, never try to sing, come for the show. You might hear some music, so I really focus on the live performance aspect, and it's almost kind of a punk rock, a visceral, just kind of like get it out there, plug it in, and let other people figure it out. Which doesn't always make for the highest quality, but it definitely makes for good entertainment, No,
that's interesting, and I think what really separates the greats from the goods, or the great from the good, are the entertainment aspects. Like, I remember when I saw 311 at Carolina Rebellion back 2014, I want to say. And I mean, I was listening to their records for a long time. My friends got me into them.
Yeah.
But I mean, besides Van Halen and Doobie Brothers and a couple of others that blew me away. I mean, I have to say 311 totally. It was literally probably the most pristine concert I've ever seen.
And I have heard that about them. It's sort of this next tier experience.
They came out. I mean, you would have loved it because they did their usual thing for an hour. They played the songs great. The engineering was stellar, especially for outside, and we were front row. Like, we waited 2 hours to see them, and I couldn't believe how well it sounded, and the mains were way above our heads. I was like, I don't even know how this is possible. And on top of that, they come out and they do this 10 or 15 minute drum routine, and it, you know, that can get a little dicey. Like, if it's not rehearsed and if it's not well produced.
Yeah.
It was literally like, these guys, I don't know if they have any marching band background, but they worked their asses off to put it together.
That's awesome.
And it was extremely entertaining. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was cool to see, like, just something different than just your average. And I'm all about, you know, rock.
Yeah.
But it is a show.
And that's kind of been my thing, is that, you know, a lot of, I don't take anything away. I mean, there are a lot of really talented artists in our area, you know. I mean, it's
so
a very
many.
Popular scene.
Why we started this show, you know?
Right, yeah. And so my thing is, you know, I'm not really trying to compete with any of those guys because they've got years on me, you know. My thing is, I want to sort of create my own path over here, right? So that's where the mashups and the hip hop and mixing all that stuff in comes from.
Now, was this early when you stumbled upon this type of, like, when did this happen? Like, when did you have that, you know,
it's gotta, like, you gotta use what the good Lord gave you, you know, like, I'm not the most technically proficient. I mean, you know, and I could put the time into there and get there, but it's this sort of situation where I said, you know, I start hearing a song and I go, wait, that's the same rhythm or that's the same beat as this. I said, these things can go together. You can put these in there. And I started trying it out in my sets, you know, a year or so ago, you know, and people started responding.
Right.
And, you know, people who had heard this song a million times and normally would be, you know, drinking and watching sports, turn around and they go, what did he just do? And I was like, oh, okay. So people are into this, you know, and it's controversial. Some people don't like it. Some do, you know, I've had, you know, both sides, but it's interesting that, you know, it does sort of wake people up, you know, and keep people entertained. And that's my thing, is that, you know, there are artists out there. I don't necessarily consider myself an artist. I'm an entertainer. That's what I'm there to do. You know, so there's the whole, it gets grindy when you do so many gigs and you're sort of the jukebox in the corner and nobody's paying attention, and somebody comes up, hey, play this song, you know, and that's great. You want to make people happy, but
Sweet Home Alabama.
You know, you play Wagon Wheel for the 18th time, you know, or whatever. Yeah. But I just like to do those things, but then I got to make it just a little bit different.
Right.
You know?
Well, then that's your art, is the entertainment side of it.
Right.
For sure.
And that's where the whole acoustic, that's what I say, acoustic DJ. You know, I take your playlist and I kind of mix it up.
It's really, and it's funny because, I mean, I've seen how many, I probably came out to like 6 open mics in the last month.
Yeah.
2 months now.
Yeah, you've been a warrior there, man, keeping me in business.
It's just like, dude, it's
good stuff.
Let's hang out.
But
this
we
is
jam.
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah.
That's a really great way to, like, from an amalgam standpoint, like, that is what it is. Because, you know, when we're sitting there and you just kind of jam on like a 3-4 chord progression.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 minutes go by. We've done
the last time. Yeah. It was insane.
Songs.
It just went on for like 12 minutes and we were hitting everything from, we did Du Hast. You know, we sit there, we're doing Rammstein in the middle of like a wine lounge in Holly Springs on like a Tuesday night. And we're doing like Doobie Brothers. And then we just go into Du Hast, like out of nowhere. And I was like, it just happens, you know, like, I think a lot of that comes from the hip hop background. So I used to do like freestyle raps and stuff like that.
Literally another point.
Yeah.
But let's go down this road.
Yeah. And so, if you can come up with stuff on the spot like that and pick it up quick and say, like if you're doing a battle rap and you come up here, oh, this guy's wearing a vest, and that isn't necessarily something that you would hit on, but it's there. You take what's in front of you and you mold it.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. You're doing that to this beat that maybe you've never heard before, it going in the background, and you're just throwing words on top of it.
Well, I was going to bring this up earlier. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
This is like you.
Don't let me like jump too far into the deep end. Oh wait, I'm already there.
Making up songs on the spot.
Yeah.
We talked about this in a Burger King parking lot.
That's right.
After
glamorous.
Total. I mean, in the Suburban because it was closed.
That's right.
It's the same story.
This is where the real rock and roll life happens, man. Like
and like we talked about it, and I was like, okay, cool. I took your word for it. I was like, but until you experience you doing that, you went on for 5 minutes lyrically, and it made sense. You do this whole thing about, what was it? It was like Daffy Duck.
Yeah.
And
like going through Minnesota or something, and there was
Mickey
hitchhiking,
Mouse.
And I don't know. Drinking Jack Daniels, like I don't know.
But it was
not
seamless.
Me personally, but in the song.
it was seamless.
I remember there was this lady that like shouted out like Harry S. Truman or something, right? And so like I at a different gig, and I wrote this entire song about like the post World War II era, and I get done, and she was like, "That is the most intelligent song that you basically gave everybody a history lesson in the middle of, where did that come from?" And I was like, "I don't know. I never, I didn't know you were going to say that."
That's unbelievable.
It just comes off the cuff,
That's crazy. So back on this, because I remember in the same Burger King parking lot conversation,
yes.
I gotta hear this rap battle story again with the guy from.
Yeah. So I got into doing like hip hop stuff. So I was in this acoustic duo with another local musician around here 12, 15 years ago. I don't know. I was in college, and so maybe not. Yeah, somewhere in there. Anyway, it's been a decade at least. And we were doing this sort of like jam band kind of thing where we would literally like he would play chord progressions and we would write songs on the spot, or we would rehearse 2 or 3 times and we would go up, and it was kind of messy, kind of sloppy. And throughout the course, I just started, as a natural sort of evolution of that, I started freestyling in the middle of these things. And then people were like, "Oh, you can rap." And I was like, "Well, I didn't really think about that before, but yeah, I guess I can." And that kind of went to the next
rap
thing. Yeah. And it was like the more rock and roll I look, the more hip hop that's in there. I'm getting the Jay-Z and the Nas and the Biggie and just going after it. And
what a complex.
I love it. It's
it.
just weird, man. And that's what I love. I love weird. Nobody does weird anymore. I mean, not unless it's like pre-manufactured, but I mean, just let the strangeness flow, And so I just went with it. And finally, like there was Brian Jones, one of the local guys around here, was hosting an open mic, and he started sort of encouraging hip hop artists to come out. And he was like, "Hey, and it was at a bar that's closed now, like downtown Raleigh, like this place, and it was like this under, like literally in the basement under like a nicer bar, and they had like bouncers at the door, and it was seedy sort of, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna do rap battles now," and so we get up and I started doing that, and I got in this situation where I kept doing that and going back and forth, and then eventually started doing like the parking lot rap battles and stuff like that. And this one night I was in like Morrisville outside this bar, and me and this guy, he found out I could rap, and he was like, "Oh, I challenge you to rap." And so all these people like circle around, and we get this big group together, and I start going in on him, and I guess I said something about his mom. And so the next thing I know, I'm like laying across the hood of a car. This dude just decked me in the middle of the rap battle. And the last thing that I remember seeing before I got hit, he ripped his shirt off like while about to punch me. And there's just this giant like UNC symbol with like the ram coming out of the middle of it, And I was like, I don't think this guy went to college. Bam, and I'm like laid out on the hood of this car. And then people were like, "They pulled knives on you, man. Like you didn't see any of that?" I was like, "No, they called the cops. It was crazy." I was like, the thug life chose me, like that was one of those, like the sunglasses come down, like.
What gets me is I don't think this guy went to college.
No, yeah, that was my first thing. Like I'm about like this fist is coming on my face, and I see the UNC, and I'm like, I don't think he went to Europe. Like, it's like, there's no way. Like, this guy's like 12, like seedy characters, out in the parking lot rap battling. Yeah.
So, not to digress.
No. We can get far away from that, man. Like,
that is. Well, we'll just go into this. I mean, music full time.
Yes.
Well, let me go back. Let me go back real quick. Let me go back to the education college.
Yes.
Let's go to that as a segue because I do have education here.
Sure.
Wake Tech, and you were actually thinking about.
Yes,
law
I was
point.
a part. Yeah, I was a part of their transfer program. So I was taking, a lot of the prerequisites. My original intention was to transfer to NC State and wanted to be a part of the pre-law program. And was taking a lot of political science and stuff. So with the goal of eventually becoming a politician. And then sort of through, yeah.
But that didn't happen.
Well, no.
yet.
So through the course of that, I needed to do something for money, a job. And I found out that people would pay you to train dogs and work with animals. And so I got into that and started making money, started my own business doing that. And I said, this is a lot more fun than arguing with people for a living.
Right.
And at that time, when I started down the political road, and law and stuff, politics was, it's never been friendly, but it certainly wasn't the hyper polarized, my team is the only team kind of a thing. You could be on opposing sides and have a legitimate conversation and walk away still friends.
Yeah.
And it was sort of becoming this thing where, like, if you don't agree with me, I can't talk to you ever again, which is where we are now.
It's a shame.
And I'm all for debate. I mean, I'll defend an opinion I don't agree with just for the sake of being counterpoint. I love debate. Actually, at Wake Tech, me and a friend and I founded the Oratory Society there at the Northern Campus. So I love debate. So if you could choose a point and I'll just take the counterpoint regardless. So that's something that I like, not to be argumentative, but just having an exchange of ideas, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And even if you don't agree with something, being able to look at, what makes that work, know your enemy, as it were. And take the time to understand why someone believes what they believe or why they take the stance that they do. So, but anyway, I found out that animals don't argue with you. They're a lot more fun. And, so I started doing that. And for like 10 years, I did, dog training, pet sitting, all types of animal care, worked with kennels and animal rescues and stuff, which that's another big thing. I still, even with the music, I work with Perfect Match, locally. Okay. And we do a lot of charity events and adoption events and things. So that's still animals are still very close to my heart. So
that's cool. What, if you had to say like one of the top favorite breeds,
so
how would you put it?
I say that you don't choose your breed chooses you. As someone who's done, that's right. as someone who's done a lot of training, I think that golden retrievers, German shepherds, they're some of the best breeds out there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do with one because they listen to you. I'm a Siberian Husky guy. I've got 3 Huskies and a Malamute mix. And so, I need a dog that understands what I'm asking it to do and then chooses whether or not it wants to listen. They'll sit there and they'll turn their head and they'll go, do you have food? Is there chicken over there? No, then I'm not listening to you, the first Husky that I have is bilingual. So he's trained in English and French.
Wow.
So, and he knows maybe a dozen or so commands in both. And so he knows if I switch over to French, and I don't even speak French. I had to learn to train him. But he knows if it's serious. If you bring the French out,
is there any specific reason why?
So he was 1 year old when I got him, and his original owner, her boyfriend was French Canadian, and so he taught him commands in French. And so I was like, well, this is useful because if you're at the dog park and everybody's saying, "Hey, come," being able to say it, I mean, it makes the difference. And then I expanded on that and went ahead and taught him, shake and lay down and all those different things. And
how does that work with the gigs? Because if you're gone for 6-8 hours at a time, so they're cool. They're
it's amazing because a lot of people, you hear the horror stories of Huskies where they're like, they shredded my couch, and I'm sure they could. But I've got 2 acres out in the country, and so I let them, great. And then when I'm not there, they're inside, but they're chilled out on the couch, you know, and I share my home with a sled team, So, but yeah, no, they're very well behaved.
That's cool. So then I guess going into music full time,
That frees up the schedule actually a lot more than having to be at a 9 to 5 type situation. So it actually helps a lot.
Right. Let's talk about it from a business standpoint, because one of the being an artist, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of hat wearing.
Yeah.
A lot of hat wearing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that your experience with just, and not to say just like with a negative connotation, but two totally different worlds, like dog training.
Yeah.
Live music.
It kind of,
but
you're still wrangling, it's still this group that you're trying to get them to do what you want them to do, but you can't say that, because the dogs, they'll eventually learn the commands, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well,
are the audience your dogs then?
I wouldn't,
not to put it that way.
My pack. We'll say the pack, right? And so your job when you're on stage, that's why I always tell people, if you're on stage with me, I said, don't talk to me off mic. Let's have our conversation. Even if you're saying, oh, I'm about to tune up, because you're there. You need to open up and present yourself to the.
Yeah.
So, but it's the idea of, and this also kind of goes into politics and law and all of that same thing of like trying to get people to do what you want them to do without asking them to do what you want them to do, getting the responses that you want, and that's on you. I mean, that's, as an entertainer, that's sort of what the venue is paying you for, is to get the responses that, at least at this level. I mean, now if you're an artist and you're doing original stuff out there, that's different. But as a barroom musician, don't get too caught up. It's kind of my thing. I'm a glorified jukebox.
When we were at niche.
Yeah.
The first time I met you, I think we offered you a drink.
Yes.
And you said thanks, but no thanks. I don't drink that much myself. Just a personal choice. And I want to congratulate you. You said 4 years sober.
Just at 4 years, yeah.
And that's huge.
So back, 2015.
Is there anything you want to elaborate or expand
on?
So
that's been an interesting ride for me. So I don't take anything away. I mean, if you want to imbibe, please do. The more you drink, the better we all sound, right? Like that's one of my favorite sayings, and I didn't come up with that, but I do love it. I mean, I use it at my shows, especially playing all the breweries and wine bars and stuff. I think it's a personal decision for me. I'm a better person when I'm not on it. And certainly I was never an alcoholic to the point that I'd have a drink every day, but definitely a binge drinker. So if I have one, it's 12 buddies want to come along. So if I start drinking, I'm not great at being able to stop. Sort of the same thing with music, where it just kind of keeps going. I'm very much all or nothing kind of person. So it's either off, and I'm not. It's kind of our friendship, right? We went from like not even knowing each other to being. And that's how I am. I deal in extremes. I mean, so it's very much either I'm into it or I'm not.
It's like that Billy Joel song.
It is. Yeah. I go to extremes. Right. So, oh man, great stuff.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody, I don't know if anybody knows really that song, but
Well, they should.
You
should go listen to Billy Joel.
You should.
Yeah. But yeah, so that man's a national treasure. No. Yeah. So for me, it's about keeping things in check and not wanting to cross those lines and being professional too, because when you're working in breweries and wine bars and stuff, you can be sloppy, I guess, but it's not going to give you the longevity
right
that you want. So I very much view it, it's not called show friends, it's called show business. So you want to be professional. There's sort of this decorum of, I can be crazy and over the top and silly, but when it's time for business, it's time for business.
I like that.
And so you got to draw that line.
We've adopted the same philosophy for years with my band. I mean, you got to remember, I as a teenager back, 10 years ago, it was kind of awkward. Like people were 2-3 times my age.
Yeah.
And acting like half my age.
Right. And entertainment in general draws those kind of people, the people that don't want to grow up. I mean, and you have to be, because you have to stay young and lively and pull that out. And I think there's sort of the, wearing the mask of a clown. So a lot of times behind that, people are crying inside, right?
Yeah.
You think about all the tragic stories and the people deal with depression and anxiety and different things as an artist. And it is sort of that you're always, almost at odds with yourself, because there's a situation where like, oh, I'm not good enough. But then you also, in order to be able to get up there and have the confidence to do it, you got to be like, I'm the best in the world, And so you're always, walking this tightrope. And so it's very easy to fall into substances or a negative lifestyle, of other things that you might turn to. And so, I mean, there are a lot of children that are masquerading as adults that are sort of in the business. And so being able to not fall into that is, I think, the challenge. That's the difficult part. And certainly in the past, I've been guilty of, that's what I said, it's not forever sober, it's 4 years sober. So, it's sad, not to stay on a somber note, but I mean, it is, but there's hope. You can do it. It's possible.
Well, it's choice. I mean, there's certain,
the decisions that you make,
and I can't really speak for it because I haven't struggled with it.
Right.
So I'm not going to really say much about it because my experience.
And I don't want to play anything up. I'm very fortunate that like I said, I was never an alcoholic, so it wasn't like I have to have it every day.
Right.
But it was just the situation of like, hey, once I start, I'm not good at stopping. I'm not good at saying no.
I'm on that train.
That's exactly. I love that stuff. No. Yeah. So hold on. It's thug life.
While we're here, guy eyeliner.
Yes, guy eyeliner is the best.
Let's
change your life.
How
man.
16
years old, I discovered it. Never looked back.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
Yeah,
I want to know everything that's in that makeup.
Even an old barn looks better with paint on it, man. Like it works for guys too. Like I don't know. I love makeup. And I've had people ask me about it. You play like a biker bar or redneck bar or something.
Look out.
Love them.
Look out.
But you go in and they're like, hey, what are you? Why are you wearing all that makeup, boy? Are you gay or something? And I'm like, it's not about that. I said, it's, all of the artists that I liked growing up, everybody, they did,
Freaking Pantera before Pantera was Pantera.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter. I mean, all of the great bands. I mean, you go back to the 70s, it's hit and miss. I mean, Zeppelin and stuff like that, not necessarily, but they were at least wearing women's jeans because you couldn't get men's jeans that tight, right? But I'm a huge Bowie fan. I got the combination, Bowie lightning bolt with the Elvis TCB, right? Odes to music. Right?
I love it.
Those guys, they didn't worry about what other people thought they needed to do. It was about driving your own lane and doing your own thing. But yeah, I mean, Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard and all those guys, I love the big hair, man. Like, it's funny because I do a lot of like 90s stuff now, but man, I didn't listen to like Nirvana or anything like that until like the mid 2000s, like 2005, 2006.
By the way, fantastic cover of My Girl.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Where did you sleep
last night?
Yeah. Thank you.
That was great.
Thanks.
I mean, it sounded a lot like Cobain, but you still had your own spin on it, and it just really was.
And certainly now, I can look at it and I can say, oh, there was a lot going on in that time. But yeah, growing up, it was like, oh, those grunge guys killed hair metal. I can't listen to these guys. They're like, they really like stuck it in the back of my favorite bands. And you mature, you grow up, and you realize that there's music is all around you. There's good stuff everywhere. So I don't, for example, I don't play country, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect country music artists. There's a lot of good stuff out there. It's just not
ABC.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. Well, no, that's true. I've been billed at a couple places. They're like, hey, it's going to letting people know up front, anything but country. You might hear some Biggie Smalls or something.
Oh my God. You'll hear Biggie Smalls.
That's
before,
right. You'll hear Jay-Z, but you're not going to hear any Garth Brooks is what's going to happen. So along the lines of,
you know, as we're talking about makeup and guy liner, I
wear Revlon. It's the best. No, Mac has like a guy's line, so there's good stuff. You got options. You know,
you have options.
You do. You always have options.
I was on. We talked about this a little bit. I'm not going to bore everybody with details, but I was in a film last year where I had, I showed you the mohawk.
Yeah,
see if we can get
awesome.
a picture of it up for some people.
Glam rock is not dead.
No, not at all. And it was like 2 weeks on set every day for 5 days a week or whatever it was. It was like I had to go through that hour and a half routine of them getting the hair and makeup artist just working on my hair for an hour, just trying to get this hair at this length,
right?
Go up there, and it was nuts. And then they did the eyeliner, and I never really understood. Like, I grew up in theater. We always put it on because if you're out, on stage and there's 3,000, 4,000 audience,
they're
or
not
whatever,
going to catch your features. You're going to kind of blend in and be a blob if you don't. Yeah. So
and it always seemed like a pain to me as a kid because I was always doing as like theater as a tween.
Yeah.
But then on this production last year, I was like, man, that really does something to the look. It really does have a look.
It makes a difference. It also gives you an appreciation for what ladies go through, when they're, it's like, okay, you put some effort in, I see. No, it's interesting though, because you develop the skills and now like I could be sitting in a dark car and like really quick one hand, both eyes and I'm done,
Dude, that is edgy.
Just open the eyes, and it's on. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to the whole thing. I mean, everybody, whether you believe it or not, whether you're willing to admit it, everybody looks better with makeup. I mean, it's just true. I mean, it's like
I believe it.
You want to see a car without paint? I don't think so.
Right,
like, put a little on. It's fine.
That's hilarious.
It doesn't hurt you. It's not going to hurt you. Don't be afraid of it.
We'll get to the shootout here in a second. I want to touch on two more things real quick pertaining to the makeup.
Yes. I will answer all of your questions.
The biker bars, the rednecks, whatever the stereotypical, and it doesn't even matter. It's just like people are crazy in any facet, in any light, in any creed. You got to give me some like quick story about.
So I'll tell you, like, it's funny because you would think, like, I certainly early on thought that, the biker bars or the redneck bars, those would be the places that I would run into the most friction. Now, I don't know what they say about me after I leave, but they've been some of the most accepting places. I go in and they're like, hey man, can I buy you a beer, or whatever. I'm like, are you trying to, cause I'm, but no, it's, no, they're really nice, really friendly. It actually tends to be the more upscale, more open-minded places that I run into the most questions. Why are you here? When did you start doing this? What planet did you come from? What's your orientation? What's your partner like? You get all these questions, and it's just like, no one story really comes to mind. I think one of the things that really like does become an issue is that I've got, you get the girls that come up and talk to you because they've never seen a guy in person that wears makeup before. And so if their boyfriends are there, a lot of times you get into some interesting situations where, I'm like, look, man, like she came up to me. I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
But you do get that. But it's just interesting because there is this, you almost get more prejudice from it, which is kind of what I like. Honestly, I like it because it's controversial.
You're into this controversial.
I like to draw it out because I'm like, what are your prejudices about it? You think I'm dressed like this, I'm going to do metal, and then I get up and do Britney Spears, or I'm dressed like this, and then I do a Jay-Z cover, and people are like, what's going on?
You're just
what
a stereotypical break.
I like to sledgehammer the walls of, whatever, break it all down. So
there's more to this than just entertainment.
It is. I mean, I'm a thinker, and I like to provoke thought. So, I don't necessarily care what somebody thinks about me or what their opinion is. Not to be like cliche, because everybody's like, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks. I mean, you should to a certain extent, especially if you're in the entertainment business, because you're a product. And so instead of selling goods, you're selling yourself. You're selling your own services. And that doesn't mean being a sellout. You have to be authentic. I'm not going to change within a certain parameter. Now if I'm not booking shows, then we've got a problem. But no, people want authenticity, and I think a lot of people are afraid to be authentic. They want to hide themselves, and we all do to a certain extent. But being able to put yourself out there and say, I'm doing this regardless of what you think, regardless of what your perception may be. Sit down and have a conversation with me, and let's talk about it. Let me break those stereotypes for you. You think that because of this, that I'm drinking or I'm doing drugs or that I'm, out partying and going home with a different girl every night. Let's have a discussion about what it actually means, to be an entertainer and to provide, an experience.
How long did it take when you say authenticity? Because you just hit the nail on the head when it comes to artistry. It's like, if you're not authentic, and I
people can smell it from a mile away.
I've been doing this I'm 25. I've been doing this my whole life, basically, and I'm still. And I think any artist is. You're always trying to
tweak it. You do.
But when did it really start? Kind of.
I was never a cool kid. It's funny because people will look and they'll say, oh, you're a rock star, you're doing this or whatever, and I'm like, it's not though. I was always on the outside looking in. I was never with the jocks, or I was never, this, that, or the other. I was always sort of, now granted I went to private school, so I didn't battle with a lot of the, it was very small class sizes, but, yeah. So for me, it was this sort of situation where I've never really fit in. So all I know how to be is myself. I never tried to conform. And anytime that I have tried to conform and do what other people do, I feel dirty. Like I feel empty.
Right.
It's not good for your soul to do that. But people, we have to, as a society, to a certain extent, to keep up appearances, unless you are lucky enough to do what we do, where you can kind of be weird and be celebrated for it. But if you've got to go into a cubicle or something, this is not going to cut it. You're not going to be able to, but no. So for me, it was never a question. I've always been on the outside, and I think that's why I was drawn to a lot of the artists that did things differently. Right. People like Bowie, where you're looking and you're like, man, this guy is weird, but and that goes back to, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm probably not going to say this exactly right, but Andy Warhol, was talking, and he said, don't worry about if the art that you create is good, just keep making it. While other people are arguing about it, just make more. Let them figure out what it is. And so that's why, a lot of times, I don't think about it. There's not all this thought, but I'm just like, what am I going to do? Okay, bam, done.
While we're on quotes for a second, I do want to bring this up before because the
landmine sitting in the middle of the.
we did kind of touch on this when you asked me.
Hit this water first. Hold on.
Because he comes in here and he goes, so do you want to go?
Yeah, where are we going?
Are we gonna did you have bullet points or anything? Yeah, I've got the bullet points, and this was one that if it came up, I was going to bring it up, and I'm sure you're going to have a very eloquent.
Oh, I don't know. We'll see.
Explanation of this, and this is if you want to talk about thought provoking. This is thought provoking.
Yes.
When I pass those government schools in session, I think to myself, what's going on in there is more dangerous to the future of this nation than what's going on in any terrorist training camp. Neil Bortz.
Yeah.
Who is, I don't even know who.
So he's a talk show host out of Atlanta, down in Georgia.
Okay.
And so there is an indoctrination that goes on in this country, and not to regardless of what you believe, regardless of your political stance or whatever. I'm going to speak in broad generalizations here, so let me be careful with that. But there is an indoctrination that goes on in that we teach people what to think, not how to think.
It's very similar to the George Carlin point of view.
Absolutely.
And I think so. You want to talk about thought provoking?
Yeah,
you're laughing your ass off, but I mean, you're still thinking about what he said.
And that's what, that comes back to sort of my whole, thing is like, I want to be thought provoking. I want to, I admire people that are like that. But no, it's this thing where, it goes back to, I don't really care so much what you believe. I mean, I do, I take an interest in it, but it's more, why do you believe what you believe? And this goes back to it. And so with the fact that we're taught what to think, not how to think. So there's not a lot of objective learning. Everything is memorization.
Yes.
Remember this, remember that. And the danger in that is within just a few generations, you get into the point where people don't know things because they don't know how to go find information out for themselves, or they believe whatever's told to them. Or if it comes from this source, it's okay. But if it comes from an opposing point of view, and so that's where like I will sit down with individuals of widely, if you go down and you look at my social media feed, I follow people that are on the far right. I follow people that are on the far left. I follow nihilists, people that are atheist, people that are, all different belief systems, because to me, it's important to have a well-rounded view. Understand why people believe what they believe. Not so much what you believe, but why. Where does it come from? Because I think that if you boil it all down, human emotions, we want a lot of the same things. We want to be comfortable. We want to eat. We want to sleep.
Maslow.
We want to make love, those kind of things, and have a good life. And the argument comes down into, how do we get there? And that's part of what interested me in politics so much to begin with, is that there is figuring that out, answering that question. How do we create the life that we want? Is it the individual that creates it? Is it the government that creates it? Is it the education system? Is it a combination? Is it the infrastructure? Does it come from the state? Does it come from God? Where does it come from?
Do you think?
And these are questions. Sorry, these are questions that philosophers have had since the beginning of time. So This is not original thought from me, but it is my thought process in trying to boil this stuff down.
Do you think? This is kind of a ridiculous question, but do you think history
ridiculous questions
can tell us really
absolutely
what works and what doesn't work?
Absolutely. There's nothing new under the sun.
Proverbs,
right?
baby.
That's it. So
King Solomon, man.
If you go back and you look at, our country was founded on a lot of the remnants and the basic ideas of the Roman Empire and what the Greeks did, and democracy and those kinds of things. And our founding fathers admire those guys a lot. And you look at the decline of Western civilization, you look at the decline of Rome, you can see that we're making a lot of the same mistakes because we haven't studied. They studied to build it, but we haven't looked at it and said, well, what happened
that was
to them, and how can we avoid
200 years ago.
No one who's alive now was alive then. So it's very easy. That's why, again, in just a generation or two, you can lose an entire way of thinking.
Right.
If you look at when every discussion goes to Hitler, but when you look at what happened in Nazi Germany, and you see that when the National Socialists came to power, they started changing the school books, and they started, changing the way that education was done, and removing historical events. You see the burning of books and the banning of speech. And that's one of the big things that scares me, and not a lot of things do. But when I think about the censorship that goes on both sides, even on a personal level, when you start saying, I don't want to hear what you have to say because I don't agree with it, because it offends me. And that's not pointed at any one line of thought. People do it on both sides. But it's this idea that I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to plug my ears. Then we have now stopped exchanging ideas. And so there's no hope. So then the only way is conversion. And a lot of people don't want to be converted. So then you are in a situation where you basically, that person's trash and you have to throw them away.
Right.
And so there are a lot of friendships that have been lost in the last decade or so where we've had this hyper politicization. And it doesn't mean that the ideas aren't important. These are ways of life. And a lot of times there is no middle ground. If you believe in certain ideas, if you're a strong gun proponent or gun opponent, if you're an abortion proponent or opponent, pro-life versus pro-choice, you're not going to find a lot of middle ground. And that's also okay. But once you say, I'm not going to talk to this person anymore because they have this point of view, that person is now dead to you. And that's just a scary place for me, because for me, I think there's value in each individual. And so I look for that regardless of whether or not I agree with them. I don't have a lot of enemies, I guess, is what I would say. I don't know if you can attest
to my personal background, but I was raised in a household where everybody, like you said, has value, and you got to really be careful with judging a book by its cover and all that, and everybody's got their different walks of life.
And it's interesting as a person who deals with extremes, I'm all on or all off,
right,
to say that, oh, well, we got to take this middle ground and accept, that's sort of a contradiction, but you're right. I mean, it's this situation of like, the way that I put it is right and wrong is wrong. The law is the law, whatever, however you want to look at it, whether you're looking at it from a religious standpoint or a legal standpoint or whatever. I do absolutely believe that there's black and white, but I also believe that individuals need to find that answer for themselves to a certain extent. Don't force your opinion on others.
Yeah.
Respect each other. My rights end where your rights begin.
Let me ask you this real quick. And I mean, I'm going to try and keep this again as neutral. This is just great conversation.
No, yeah.
As neutral as possible,
sure,
but from a utilitarian point of view.
Yes.
Or more, I can't remember the term for the other side of that, like from a debate standpoint,
sure,
or from a law standpoint.
You're getting into the good stuff now. Now this is,
a couple of my college courses had this in the textbooks where, what's good for one person defames the entire demographic of everybody else outside of that person in that nucleus, or, doing everything for the benefit of everybody.
So,
where do you sit with this, with some of the things that are happening right now?
So I don't talk, I've been very careful from the stage. I never talk about politics. I don't do a lot of political songs, which is ironic because I have really strong political beliefs.
I had no idea.
But I think that it's separate in my line, because it's like, I'm a barroom musician, it's not important to me that, whatever, that right, you don't need that.
Well, you're there to entertain.
I'm there
That's
to entertain.
The job.
And so the second I start taking a stance politically, I've isolated half of the crowd.
I feel the same way about
that's,
absolutely.
Half of the country voted for Trump, half the country voted for Hillary. So for you to say all of this group or all of that group is no good to me, half your audience is gone.
Yeah. Unwise.
And that's not to say that I don't have beliefs. I do, but it's not important. It's not important to the crowd.
Right.
I'm not a crusader out here trying to do that, but I will say this. In many ways, I take a very, I'm a free market capitalist. Okay. So that first and foremost. So I believe in the laissez-faire, the free market. And I'm also very much a libertarian. So I believe in states' rights and things like that. And so for me, we're in a much better situation if you and I are here and I tell you that you should move your phone because it's about to fall off the edge of the table. I can see that because I'm here with you. But if I'm in the hallway and I'm like, everyone's phone needs to be moved to a certain location, and that's the difference, is that if at local level, government is so important, right? Because those are the people that have their finger on the pulse. And a lot of times it's just a stepping stone. They're just there to get to the next office and move on up, right? But it is so important to be involved in local elections, in local government, because that is the place where the actual changes happen for so many people for many, many years. Now, there are big, broad, sweeping things that can happen, that president can make decisions, Congress can make decisions, and it can affect the entire country. But a lot of times it's, again, everyone's phone has to be this at this location, or this bottle of water, there are these broad sweeping laws that don't fit for everyone.
Right.
And that's why states' rights and even local municipality rights are so important, because those are the people that understand. California, they've got drought, they've got wildfires. We don't deal with that here. I mean, we deal with drought sometimes, but we don't have wildfires. They do. So they have different problems there than we do. So if you set just a general water restriction or a general idea on how to deal with that for every state, some states don't need that. You've got the levee system down in Louisiana. When you start talking about, we don't have those here. So laws pertaining to that are not going to affect us.
Right.
So it's so important. Yes, there are general ideas, and the founding fathers, they set this out, honestly. Take a minute, read your Constitution, read your Bill of Rights, go through and look at where we are. This is all provided for, honestly. It's just that, again, we go to that situation where we stop paying attention, and then people start saying, hey, well, we should be doing this differently on both sides. I mean, I'm not attacking one side or the other. It happens on both sides. It happened under the Bush administration. It happened under President Obama's administration.
I was a product of that, of what occurred with, that administration and taking these 3-hour exams for, it's
standardized testing is one of the worst things. That, again, it goes back. We're training you to test. We're not really training you what the meaning is behind it.
Right.
Can you test?
And I remember.
And then they cut music programs and physical education and
Luckily,
things like that.
The public school I was involved with, they really did have an appreciation for the arts. I had the best vocal teacher,
and that shows. You guys need to go check him out. Seriously,
I appreciate it. Yeah, she was amazing.
Voice of a generation over here,
Miss Shugart.
Seriously,
unbelievable.
Shout out to Miss Shugart,
Marilyn Shugart.
There you are. If you're out there,
and there's a couple others too along my path, but they really, and it goes back to the principle.
Yes. Fighting for those programs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was into he was a music director.
Oh wow. So you really lucked out.
I really lucked out. And he and I got along very well. And I think he DJ'd back during the early 70s. And so he knew all the, we would talk about vinyl all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
We would talk about Grand Funk Railroad and, all those bands from that era.
Classic stuff.
And it was just, you could see that little smirk come up is this kid actually knows what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I mean, really, yeah.
Where was I going with that? Yeah. So with the school system,
yeah, No Child Left Behind and all the different programs that went on under and so that's what I'm saying. This is not, people will sit there and they'll tell you, oh, my side never does anything wrong. No, trust me, it's on both sides of the aisle. And so I'm not here to attack one side or defend another side or whatever. It's just that in general, we need to think a little bit and go back and read a history book and look at what goes on and look at the world, because the world is full of different forms of governance and has been historically, and look at the prosperity that we currently have. Not everyone, but in general, prosperity in the United States, the wealth that's been created. Now, whether or not how you feel about the dispersion of that wealth, but even the poorest persons in the United States compared to the poorest persons in other countries.
Stark difference, a majority of the time.
Majority of the time, right. We're not, I'm using really broad terms. You can cherry pick and you can find examples on both ends.
Nothing's set in stone.
Right.
There's always,
but just as a culture, as a society, that's why the United States is so influential, and that's not to say that, there isn't wonderful culture everywhere. There is. But I speak like a politician. I got to dance on both sides of the line. But no, it's true. But to look at it and say, everybody needs to take a breath, think, and hug it out. we're all Americans, man. We're not enemies. And so, be that first, I think is,
Yeah, no, I mean,
we're sharing a country.
I could talk about this stuff all day long, man.
And this is the artist lounge, not
this is the artist lounge,
not the political.
But there's an
arena.
there's an art to. I think there's an art to everything.
Absolutely,
everything.
Yeah.
And whether it's your taste or not, that's something else.
Right.
But, and I've been pondering about this a lot recently.
Sure.
The more I just see the world and for what it is and the characters within it. There's so many folks that are creative that, just because they're not holding a paintbrush and an easel or a painting on an easel.
Yeah.
And working with lighting and audio and stage work. I mean, you got to be in the political sphere. I mean, every day from a business standpoint, creativity, inspiration is crucial.
It is everywhere. Yeah. And it's essential. to survival.
Yeah.
It's in the human spirit. It's in the soul.
Yeah. And from a political state, because you and I share and I don't talk really about politics, but
Right,
I mean, people know.
That's a great way to get blackballed.
People know where I come from, though.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're like, we know, they can read me like a book. They've got it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, well, maybe not as similar with you because of all the.
No, that's what I love is like, to again, break stereotypes and to say, look, think about your perception.
Right.
What does it mean? Why do I have to play for a certain team because I look a certain way?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. I guess we'll move to the shootout now.
Yeah, of course. Now that we're like 2 hours at no, I'm just kidding.
No, this has just
great.
been
It's
great.
been fantastic.
I mean, we could go down that road forever.
Absolutely.
Favorite film?
Are there children watching? I like Pulp Fiction. I think it's great.
It's fantastic. Fantastic.
I love Quentin Tarantino.
Oh.
And it's ironic because I get into this a lot with music too, because in my daily life, I don't use profanity. And it's not necessarily for a religious reason or whatever. It's
but
just
wait a minute,
not.
I've been working on it. It became a habit in middle school and high school.
I mean,
and it's like,
I'm not. There's no judgment on that. If you're out there and you want to drop an F-bomb, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. It's not a part of my vernacular. So it's ironic because I listen to a lot of hip hop. And I listen to, I love Tarantino films and things like that. And so I'm, surrounded by it to a certain extent. But anyway, no, Pulp Fiction, the cinematography is brilliant.
Well, it's funny because two people come to mind, Prince and David Lynch.
Yeah.
Because I think both of them forbid, personally,
It's just a decision. I mean, and for me too, like a lot of times I feel like a man out of time, like maybe I was born too late. Despite all of this, I'm actually very old fashioned. And so there's a, opening the car door for
80s
ladies
is
and those kind of things. Well,
now,
that's true.
so,
Now it is retro.
You'd be like me with the,
no, it's good.
75, 75 look.
Getting your Jim Morrison on, right? Yeah. Go listen to The Changeling. Is it still up or did you?
Yes,
go listen to The Changeling. It's fantastic. Anyway.
Yeah, no. Well, real quick on favorite film.
Yes.
Have you seen The Hateful Eight?
Yes, fantastic. You know that they destroyed the guitar that he smashes is a real Martin from the Martin Museum. It's from the Martin Museum.
My God.
It's priceless, $1 million guitar, right? And so they had been using a fake one for filming, and when they got ready to do the final take, they replaced it with a real one. He didn't know it. And so when actor? And so when you see her reaction, it's because she knows it's real, and that's why she's freaking out. And so Martin has now said they're not going to lend guitars to any other films ever again.
Dude,
they destroyed
a nuts
century-old Martin guitar. Yeah,
dude,
from the museum. It's horrible. I got goosebumps. That's just wrong.
It's
just
crazy.
Wrong. But that's why her reaction is the way that it is. Yeah.
Was that like in the first third of the film when everybody's coming in?
This is when they're in the cabin. They're all like held up there,
right?
And she's like strumming on the guitar, and he takes it from her and just like bashes it against the post.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's a real
spoiler alert.
No, there's not. But it's a real Martin. That's a real right turn of the century, like 1912.
I'm gonna have to go back. I mean, there's so much that happens
and she
in that plot.
Freaks out and screams, and they wanted that reaction, and so that's why they used the real one.
Wow,
horrible. It's horrible. I don't think there was even enough insurance to cover that. I mean, that's priceless.
Crazy.
Not another one in the world.
I don't even know how to compute that.
just tear.
That's crazy. I brought that movie up because it's obviously Tarantino.
Yeah, fantastic.
I haven't seen every single Tarantino film yet.
Yeah,
I've seen Pulp Fiction. Mm-hmm. I've seen
Reservoir Dogs.
Not yet.
Okay,
I need to see Reservoir Dogs. Yeah. But Hateful Eight was just
the writing. I mean, that's the big thing for me is sort of this combination of the dialogue and then the camera angles and everything. That's one of the things that I look for is like the good cinematography. Fun fact, I used to manage Hollywood Video back when that was like a thing. Like I would kind of work my way up. And so I've seen thousands of films. And so I'm a movie buff. And so the cinematography behind Tarantino's, stuff. That's one of the things, like, I love an M. Night Shyamalan movie, but like the camera angles kill me because he'll be like this close to something and there's like stuff happening off the edge, and I'm like,
yeah, it's a huge,
it's a way to shoot, but it's not one of my favorites,
it definitely is a huge component to telling the story, because so much can be done without.
And to be fair, I mean, that's the way that M. Night Shyamalan wants to tell his film. It's his story to tell. So he wants to build suspense that way, and that's fine. It's just not one of my preferred. I mean, I love his films, but the cinematography for me detracts from it, versus Tarantino is able to, from the soundtrack, all of his movies have fantastic soundtracks. The cinematography, the dialogue, I mean, it's a combination, and then always an all-star cast.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the beginning, I mean, it's just brilliant actors. So,
some of the moments, and two things real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I can't even talk about Hateful Eight because we will literally be here all day, and we won't even make it to our gigs tonight.
Right.
But with Pulp Fiction, there's two things, just small little things that really stood out to me that were nuts. When I think it's Butch is walking through the alleyway and under the fence to get to his apartment, and that camera goes through the fence. I still don't understand how they did that. If it was they had camera B operator or grip B operator on the other side of the wall, and once they get past and the frame goes past that spot, he comes in and just seamlessly grabs a camera.
It's the details, because it's like, it would be so easy to just stand back and take a shot from back here and let him do his thing.
Yeah.
But Tarantino was like, no, we're going to go in,
They follow him through that field, and I don't know if that's before the incident in the intersection or after. I can't remember. I think it's before.
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 Yeah.
Because he's going to the apartment. Right. That really was nuts when I saw it. I was just flipping out.
And one of the things that I heard Tarantino talk about too is, like, in the beginning, in the apartment scene, where they're going in, that hallway shot, it's one long shot the whole time. They're going.
That's right. That's right.
It's all, it's no editing. It's just one camera, one shot. Which saved him money, but is also just brilliant cinematography. I mean, it takes...
Well, yeah, you got to block it. You got to rehearse it. I mean, there's just so much that goes into it.
It says a lot about the actors. It says a lot about the director. I mean, the whole thing. It's a masterpiece.
To me, it makes it more real, because I think people need that. And the other thing that bothers me with scripts is, like, because I could tell you, being an actor for years and working on so many different projects, it's like, some of these scripts that you audition for, you're even in, it's like, dude, why is this character even saying this? Like, there needs to be elasticity to the scene, in my opinion.
So, not to interrupt, but that brings in a good point. So, I'm a Pink Floyd fan, and I heard them discuss, I believe it was Roger Waters was talking about this, and he said that the space between the notes in a Pink Floyd song are just as important as the notes themselves.
Like Miles Davis.
You have to know where to put the space. And so it's the same thing. If you're just talking to fill up space in a film, real life has gaps. There are times where people are not, you're just sitting there and you take that beat. And that's one of the things I think that bothers me about I watch a lot of YouTube too, and they edit it down so that you're only getting the action, and they do it because that sells, but it's not very realistic.
Right.
I'd much rather have a conversation.
Notice we don't edit here.
No,
this is all.
Right. If you see a cut, it's because we had to turn the cameras off. That's it.
We're dealing with, and I love Canon, but we're dealing with, DSLRs. So.
The restraints of the equipment is all. But this is all unedited, live, without a net.
David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Oh, David Lee, man.
Absolutely.
Now,
I gotta.
I've seen them both, and Sammy currently does a better show just because he's taking better care of himself. But there's no question. I saw him on the Best of Both Worlds tour where they were touring together before they got back with Van Halen. And Dave was, balding and missed half of his lyrics, even though he wrote them and stuff, But he's still incredible to watch. It's just that Sammy's taking better care of himself.
Okay.
No question. David Lee Roth. I'm not a Van Hagar guy. Don't ever get that wrong.
I saw David with Van Halen.
Yeah. They're
it was like, I don't know. Now it's like
three
years ago or something.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And to me, he looked like he was in good shape.
Yeah.
And he sounded good.
Now to be fair, I mean, I'm talking about like 2003 or something. So I mean, he was in this, kind of lull.
Was that like pre-body tattoo?
He had done the stint as a paramedic or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a rough patch for him.
There's a great.
We all go through that.
There's a great interview of him with Joe Rogan. You've probably seen, and he's talking about like the Hudson River with the canoe, and that just cracks me up.
I love Dave though. Diamond Dave, man,
unbelievable.
Yes.
While we're there, favorite record. It might be Van Halen record for you. I don't know. Because Van Halen. I mean,
so here's the issue that I have with this because people ask this.
It's so tough. I know.
I come from very diverse. It'd be easy to say best rock record,
best rock
record.
Let's go with that. Then we'll go
best
to hip-hop.
rock record. Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Wow. Okay.
The Wall. I mean, there's not. It's from beginning to end. You sit down, you listen to the whole thing.
Right.
The composition of it.
Right.
Best Van Halen record. Ooh. See, 1984 is good, but you get a lot of the synths in there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still going to go 1984, though. I like 1984.
Hot for Teacher.
What are you going to do?
Vocal mic.
So for forever, I used Shure Super 55s, the Elvis mic, which is cool because the Super 55 has the beta cartridge, but I've recently switched to just a straight up beta because I can do more handheld stuff with it and sling it around Roger Daltrey style. Hopefully it doesn't come unclipped and hit anybody in the head. We haven't had that happen yet. I know he used to tape his for that.
Yeah.
For you kids out there, Roger Daltrey is with The Who, a small band that
I saw him.
That's really
open up for Clapton. Believe it wasn't The Who, but obviously, but it was great.
So I'm a Shure fanboy. I love
you
Shure
and I both,
mics.
and we are
love them
here, talking through them. Pick. Guitar pick.
So this is ironic because I watched your last interview and you guys were talking about the joys of a thick pick.
Yeah.
So I'm not a very talented. I'm a very sloppy guitar player.
Thin.
I use very thin. I use nylon. Ooh. I use Dunlop nylon, like the really thin gray ones. So it's like a feather.
And I mean, I wouldn't even say anything. Forget about sloppy or clean. It's just a different sound.
It is. It is.
For what you do, and
I don't pick a lot of into. I'm a strummer, and it's a lot of blocky. Which
I think is better because it doesn't. You have a little bit more. It's a little bit more malleable, a little bit more ply to it.
It does well with the palm muting. I do a lot of palm muting, which is another reason that I don't know if you're going to go to this, but another reason that I prefer Martin guitars, not so. Whatever. I'm not. I have everything. I mean, I've got Yamaha. I've got Ovations of whatever. But I do like Martins because they have that bottom end. Yes. And as I like to say, bass covers a multitude of sins. So you can be really sloppy and use that thin pick and use that Martin and just chug it out, and you're getting the bass root notes out there. And so it makes for a.
We've got a
especially for hip hop
D28.
Yeah.
A 1970 D20 is my dad's.
I'm drooling.
Somewhere around here.
It's awesome.
But it's on a cutaway. So, it's great for chords and everything, but you can't really go up there.
Right. So for me, I don't need any of that.
Most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you.
So the very first show that I ever played in front of anyone.
Wow.
I had never played before on stage in front of like a crowd, and I get up there and into the first song, I forget all the words, and I ran off stage. I went to the bathroom, I threw up, and I left. And I said, I'm never going to get on stage ever again. we hadn't really talked about this, but I deal with anxiety and like panic disorder and stuff like that. So I get really horrible stage fright. You would never know this now, but I get really horrible stage fright. And so I got up there and I'm just like, da, 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 and just shut down. And I was like, I'm done. That's all. And I walked off and I felt horrible. I left the band up there and everything. I mean, it was bad. This was 15, 20 years ago, a long time ago.
Oh my. God.
And I was like, I'm never ever doing that again. And they're like, no, let's go back and try this again. And I was like, the band, they're like, well, come on.
The same night?
Yeah. No. Like the next week they were like, oh, we'll do this again. It'll be fine. And, cause I'm great in the rehearsal space. I'm fine. I'm a rock star, like moving around with the mic stand and, pointing out the crowd and everything. I get on stage and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like, and,
wow, man.
I decided that if I'm going to do it, then that's never going to happen again. And so now, even if I do forget the words, I just go into a different song, or I make a joke, or I find a way around it.
That's incredible.
But
that's an incredible story.
No, it was horrible.
Well, yeah,
it was horrific.
But,
the
fact that you were able to, dude, I would have never guessed that in a million years.
Yeah, I don't talk about it a lot because I think it's become really popular to hang everything on. You become whatever you deal with for a lot of people, which is not. We should talk about it. Anything. I mean, it's important to discuss issues so that other people that are going through things know that they can, make it through. That they're not alone.
I dealt with, my story's crazy. We don't have time to get into it. People can see it online. It's out there. Long story short, not really with stage fright because I grew up doing this.
Yeah.
But I had a multitude of vicissitudes at a certain point in my late teen years, and it totally opened up a portal to experiencing anxiety, depression, all that. For me personally, you probably will agree with me, a lot of it I learned, and I know this for a fact, like I learned that it was spiritual.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. Well, we'll definitely, we'll have you back at some point, and we'll have to get into all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh
my! Look out! Now I'm
believe
scared.
in ghosts? Question mark.
Yes. So
you ever seen one? Because I have.
Yes,
believe it or not.
Actually, yes.
Okay.
So for me, it's I don't know what they are. So this is where I am with most like aliens, ghosts, stuff like that. The unexplained. I love it. It's fascinating.
Beep.
It's fascinating.
That's my UFO sound.
I love it. I love this stuff, but the thing is, I'm also the type of person that's okay to say, I don't want to jump to conclusions and say that it's definitely this thing. So I'm okay with that.
Politician.
I want to know, but I don't want to say oh, that was definitely grandma that was over there, that moved my coffee mug.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was some other dimensional being or some ethereal, there are a lot of options.
We can agree. I think we both can agree that it's, but and I feel the same way.
Too many people have credible people. Too many people have experienced things that they can't explain to say that there's nothing.
Well, especially critical folks that were anti,
right?
And then they have an experience.
Oh,
and
I'm a huge skeptic,
way.
but no, there's stuff happens. Things happen.
Yeah,
that are unexplainable. What it is,
I don't. You may not
I
be able
don't
to
know.
Yeah.
And maybe in different situations, it's different things. So who knows? That goes to the questions of things like time and trying to understand the theory of everything, right? What links it all together. So, yes.
Last question here, I guess.
Final round, fight.
What would you tell your 15-year-old self if you could go back and do so?
Oh man. So one of my favorite quotes. I'm full of quotes, right? One of my favorite quotes lately is from The Rock. And he says, it's good to be important, but it's important to be good. It's great to be on stage and to have a crowd sing back to there's nothing on earth like being on stage and you sing and they sing it back.
That validation,
you step away
gratification
from the mic and they're still going, or somebody comes up and they shake your hand and they go, it's cool. It is cool. I'm not gonna tell you it isn't. It can be addictive. It's honestly.
Oh yeah.
But it's so much more important to show love to each other and to be kind. You can always, it's very easy, especially in society today, to be selfish and to look at things and to be out for yourself. It's so much more important to be kind. And so I would say that to my 15-year-old self. I would say, look, find that sooner. Which is not to say that I was ever a super jerk, but I was self-interested, as most people are. And there is a certain level you have to be self-interested to be an artist, because nobody's going to want you to succeed more than you want you to succeed. They're going to want you to do what they want you to do. So they're going to say, hey, you need to be an actor, but you need to do this type of acting, or you need to do this kind of music. I'll support you if you're this type of artist. You are the only one that has that vision for yourself. So there is a level of self-interest that you have to do what we do, but let it end there. When it comes to everything else, a closed hand can't lose anything, but it also can't receive. So it's really important to make sure that you're reaching out to people. And being ready to give of yourself. And then that also allows you to receive as well. So when you don't worry about you so much and you look at the bigger picture, again, goes back to we're all here, we're sharing this space. That sounds very hippy dippy, which I'm not typically that type of person. Nothing against people who are. But it's really important. Kindness, I think, is the most important thing. Love is the message. So
what a way to go out.
Yeah.
We'll put every single article of social media that we can dig up on your description box.
We got Facebook, we got Instagram, we got Twitter. Occasionally I'm on Twitch live streaming. If you're on Tinder, swipe right. I'll come have a pizza with you. No pressure. Netflix and chill. No, no, literally like what christianmingle.com.
Oh, God.
Like, whatever, farmers only. No, I'm social media is everywhere, man. Yeah. Just Maverick Rose music. Look it up.
We'll have it in the description box.
It's cool.
You're booked out
through December. Yeah.
Totally
some
booked
stuff
out.
Early next year, but yeah, pretty much 4 or 5 shows a week through December. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And I'll definitely be there for
yeah, we'll jam.
Good amount of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for tuning in. This is really humbling, really incredible to have you here. And
thank you so much for having me out. Yeah.
So glad you can make it out. We'll see you guys on the next Arts Lounge. Take it easy.